Marvel's Phase 4 is starting out with Black Widow, a prequel taking place after the events of Captain America Civil War. While the film is called Black Widow, another name has been taking over the headlines for the last few months, the Red Guardian. We got our first glimpse of him in the trailers, where he is played by lovable small-town sheriff David Harbour. The Red Guardian we see in the trailers is a bit more schlubby than we're used to seeing, and from the sounds of it, he's been out of the game for a while.
Still fits.
So, why has he decided to come back? Is this the same Red Guardian from the comics? And are there other Red Guardians? Is he supposed to be a superhero or a villain? Who even is the Red Guardian? With over 7 iterations of different Red Guardians, along with comics from the last 50 years, it can be a bit difficult to find out who exactly the Red Guardian is supposed to be. To find out the answers to these questions, pour yourself a big bowl of borscht, put on your best Russian accent, and get comfortable because this is... Let's start at the very beginning and talk about the writers behind the Red Guardian, John Buscema, but more importantly, Roy Thomas. Roy co-created some of the most popular superheroes today like Wolverine, Luke Cage, Ghost Rider, Vision, and the Red Guardian. Roy moved to New York when he was 24 and began working as an assistant for Mort Weisinger, the editor of the Superman comics. Roy said he would go home to my dingy little room and actually feeling tears well into my eyes at the ripe old age of 24. Feeling down, Roy penned a letter to Stan Lee praising the work he has done for the Marvel Comics. Stan Lee phoned Thomas and asked him to take a writing test. The test was to take 4 pages from Jack Kirby's Fantastic Four Annual No. 2 that had the dialogue taken out and to replace it with their own. The day after taking the test, Roy was offered a job while proofreading a Supergirl story. He quit working at DC after just 8 days and was at Marvel in less than an hour with an assignment to do. He was working 40-hour weeks in a small office with a production manager and secretary. Anyone involved with Marvel would pass through there. Stan began asking Roy to proof his finished stories and eventually would come into the office to ask Roy about specifics of the Marvel continuity. Roy began taking characters that Lee created, such as Black Widow, and began to tie a sense of continuity, much like how the current Marvel films are. Lee noticed this and quickly promoted him to an editorial assistant instead of just a staff writer. Roy said, "One of the reasons Stan liked my writing was that after a few issues, he felt he could trust me enough that he virtually never again read anything I wrote. Well, at least not more than a page or 2 in a row, just to keep me honest." Marvel's current comic structure is to try and keep real-world events out of the comics. They want their current properties to be timeless, and nothing can date something faster than tying it to a specific event. This is why it's so painful when a film makes a reference that will be dated before the movie even comes out. The only exception to this is Fortnite, obviously. In the 1960s, comics borrowed from real life all the time. Steve Rogers was fighting in World War II after being injected with a serum. During the Cold War, talks of a space race and nuclear bombs filled the news. The Fantastic Four took the space race and gave it a Marvel twist with everyone gaining powers. The Incredible Hulk was created by a gamma bomb designed by the United States. People wanted to see real-world events intertwined with these whimsical superheroes. Today, we prefer to use comics, films, and video games as an escape from reality and keep the harshness of the real world away from what we keep close to us. This brings us to the Red Guardian. The Red Guardian first appeared in Avengers number 43. The cover claims this to be the most talked about supervillain of the year. There's a big expectation to have with a brand new character. The first Guardian, albeit the second iteration after a retcon, was Alexei Shostakov. This is the same name that's used in the Black Widow trailer, so it's safe to say that this is most likely the Red Guardian we will be getting. Alexei is married to Natasha Romanova, famous Russian ballerina. The two of them become agents for the KGB. The Soviets had a particular interest in Alexei, and while Natasha was away from home on a mission, Alexei was informed that he would have to go rogue and never contact his friends or family ever again. This is one of those moments where Marvel injected a bit of real-world history into their comics. In the comic, the Soviets chose to send Alexei over Yuri Gagarin to be the first man in space. They fake Alexei's death and Natasha returns and is distraught to hear of her husband's passing. She decides she wants to honor the memory of her husband and trains to become a super soldier for the KGB, which is exactly what they wanted. She adopts the name Black Widow and eventually defects to the United States. The KGB trained Alexei over the next few years to become a ruthless, cold killer. This could explain why in the trailer for Black Widow, Alexei is putting the costume back on after a period of time has passed. Alexei finally earns the name the Red Guardian, as well as a signature weapon that will without a doubt be cooler than Captain America's. A belt buckle that he can retract with magnets. Nice. While he didn't have any actual superpowers, he was still a remarkable athlete and was heavily trained in unarmed combat. After his training, the People's Republic of China developed a superweapon called a psychotron, a device that could cause mass hallucinations to an entire country. While planning on conquering both the United States and Russia, they ran into a problem. China needed a way to bring the psychotron close enough to the country they wanted to conquer. They decided to befriend Russia to use their submarines, as they thought Russia would be more likely to help defeat the United States than the other way around. The Russians sent the Red Guardian along with General Yuri Brushov, who the Red Guardian had no previous contact with. He was assigned to protect both Yuri and the weapon. The Russians also made him follow orders from Colonel Ling, the head of the Red Chinese military base. Black Widow is sent on a mission by S.H.I.E.L.D. to the base but is caught. Hawkeye, her current significant other, followed her on her mission along with the Avenger Hercules. The Red Guardian captures Hawkeye, and Hercules gets too close to the psychotron and begins hallucinating. The Red Guardian reveals his identity to Hawkeye and Black Widow, who immediately recognizes him as her dead husband. The Avengers show up with Captain America, and this is finally the Red Guardian's chance to prove who is the superior country representative. When Captain America was just about to beat him, Colonel Ling electrifies a grid that Cap was standing on and he passes out. The Red Guardian is upset that he didn't beat Captain America in a proper battle. During this, Black Widow sneaks away and destroys the Psychotron with a Widow's Bite. Ling tries to shoot Black Widow, but ends up shooting the Red Guardian who tries to stop him. Hercules is carrying Captain America away while the facility is exploding, and Ling aims a laser gun at him. Alexei refuses to let a brave and helpless opponent die and nudges Ling's gun at the last moment, sending the shot into gas pipes that resulted in the entire base exploding. Everyone except Alexei and Ling make it out of the base and safely return to the United States. It would be a while before we got to see more love for our favorite Red Russian. The second iteration follows Tanya Belinsky, another ally to the Soviet Union. She's a talented neurosurgeon, but after her dissident father was sent to Siberia, she put on the costume and adopted the persona of the Red Guardian. She was radically different than the previous iterations as she protected other dissidents and fought crime. She wasn't a loyal diehard for her country like Alexei was, and saw quite a lot wrong with what they were doing. Doctor Strange contacted her as they needed to perform a delicate brain surgery and needed the best of the best. She decided to stay in the United States and join the Defenders. Although she wasn't pleased with what the Soviet government was doing, she was still a communist, and this offered a counter perspective against the majority of capitalists in the Defenders. She was targeted by Sergei Krylov, a Russian agent who bested her intellectually. He exposed both of them to high amounts of radiation. She was under his control because of his new powers, but eventually Tanya teamed up with the Defenders and defeated him. Tanya's radiation levels were so high that she had to leave the Defenders. She'd show up from time to time and eventually was able to gain control over her powers and changed her name from the Red Guardian to Starlight. The third iteration of the Red Guardian was in Captain America number 352, with Joseph Petkis putting on the costume. They originally planned on having Captain America and the Red Guardian be opponents again, much like in the first run of comics in the late 60s. By the time he was reintroduced, it was 1989, and relations with Russia and America were starting to get much better. To parallel this, they had Captain America and the Red Guardian have a bit of tension between the two of them, but ultimately be comrades. Joseph was like a mix of both Tanya and Alexei. Like Alexei, he was a mirror of Captain America for the Soviets, and even upgraded his flying magnetic belt buckle to an actual shield. But like Tanya, he was a man of the people. Joseph even takes Captain America on a walking tour of Moscow, where the Guardian is cheered and applauded more than Captain America is back home. They even fought a mutant bear-like creature together on another occasion. Nice. He worked for the Soviet super soldiers, but their name was later changed to the People's Protectorate after the fall of the Soviet Union. He often teamed up with the Avengers on missions, even aiding them in a fight with the Hulk. The People's Protectorate merged with Cyberforce, a mutant vigilante team, and thus the Winter Guard is born. Petkis is the leader of the group and changed his name to Steel Guardian. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and Marvel had a bit of a sticky situation on their hands. Over the last 30 years, Marvel introduced plenty of Soviet supervillains that suddenly had no one to work for. We see here how incorporating real-life events into comics can be a bit disastrous. What happens when real life changes before you're ready? They dealt with this by releasing a one-shot comic in 1992 titled Soviet Super Soldiers. The issue showed how all the different Soviet Marvel characters dealt with the collapse of the Union. Throughout the video, I've been talking about different iterations of the Red Guardian. Technically, all the iterations should be bumped up by one, but calling Alexei the first Red Guardian while technically being the second is just confusing. In 1991, Alexei, spelled differently, Lebedev, was reintroduced as the Red Guardian in Namor the Submariner Annual No. 1. He was revealed to have been the very first Red Guardian during World War II and even fought alongside Captain America and the British equivalent, Union Jack. No love for Captain Canuck. After the war ended, Alexei returned back to being a Soviet soldier and was eventually killed by his own government for not being loyal enough. Hence, we have Alexei Shoshkatov being the second Red Guardian. The seventh iteration of the Red Guardian was portrayed by Nikolai Krylenko, aka Vanguard. He was the son of Russian nuclear physicist Sergei Krylov, aka Presence, but was ripped away from his family along with his twin sister, Lenya Petrovna, aka Darkstar. They were taken by the Soviet government and, what else, trained as super soldiers. The difference this time being that the two showed signs of mutant natures, spiking the interest of the KGB. They fought alongside the Soviet super soldiers against American superheroes like Iron Man. The government wanted to eliminate Presence and sent his own two children to assassinate him with no knowledge of who he is or what their relationship to him is. After discovering what the mission was really about, the three of them join together and fight again the Soviet super soldiers. They flee to the United States after becoming fed up with communism. They end up being captured and returned home where they are kept comatose and studied. A team of mutant exiles end up breaking them out. Darkstar is killed on a mission and Vanguard swears to avenge her death. This leads to a disturbance in the Winter Guard and the creation of a new group named the Protectorate. She is resurrected during a mission and Vanguard took up the identity of the Red Guardian. After this, the Red Guardian began showing up as just another costume superhero in later comics. There aren't backstories for these iterations, and usually they are working for the Winter Guard. Krasno Garnitsky was the fifth Guardian and only appeared in 3 issues before being assassinated. This may not seem like that many issues, but when you realize that the original Red Guardian was only in 2 issues, it adds up. The 6th Red Guardian was only named Anton and was kind of a jerk. He ended up being a life model decoy, which in the Marvel world is an android that looks and acts almost exactly like the original person it is trying to duplicate. Convenient. He's also shown up in an animated Avengers show played by Troy Baker.
Throwing your shield at me, son?
As well as in the LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2.
Glad we could be of assistance.
Finally, we get to the Black Widow film. Based on all the different versions of the Red Guardian, it's pretty safe to say that we'll be seeing Alexei Shostakov in the film. In the trailer, we see him putting on the suit despite him being clearly out of shape in practice. Around the table are Yelena Belova and Melina Vostokov, who, along with Black Widow, are all Soviet agents, and Alexei refers to them as a family. In the comics, the two only reunite after bumping into each other on opposing sides. Here, it seems as if they have returned together on purpose. I'm sure they will have to put aside their differences to take down the main bad guy. What we don't really know is where this will fit into the timeline. The fall of the Soviet Union was in 1991, and in Captain America the Winter Soldier, we find out that Black Widow was born in 1984. So, unless she was some sort of boss baby helping the Russians, I'm sure there'll be a bit of retconning in this film. In addition to that, it's always tricky making a prequel in such a well-planned film universe. Since this takes place right after Civil War, and we haven't seen the Red Guardian teased in any of these movies, it's pretty safe to say that he will either die at the end of the film, or go into hiding yet again. The Red Guardian seems like a bit of a double-edged sword to be introducing into the Black Widow solo film. It seems like not a lot of people know about the character, and even after scouring through all the comics, there really isn't too much to the character. He was always created to be a foe or parallel for Captain America, and has never really gone beyond that. The costume is similar, the weapons are similar, and even their origins are similar. Combine this with the fact that David Harbour doesn't have the best track record for reigniting old characters, it doesn't look too good for him. But on the other side, some of the best superheroes have come from reimagining older characters. Iron Man was often thought of a B or C class superhero, and Robert Downey Jr. has completely transformed what people think of the character today. I still remember sitting in the theater after Avengers hearing the word Thanos being whispered around me and googling to see who the purple guy was. Not only that, but people are always waiting for their underrepresented superhero to be championed in. I'm still waiting for some Canadian representation. Hopefully, if the Red Guardian is popular enough, maybe we'll see some of the even stranger and wilder Marvel heroes on the big screen. I know I'm not the only person waiting for a Squirrel Girl movie. That was a lot of Red Guardian talk. Are there any fans of the original hero who are excited for Black Widow? Do you think David Harbour will elevate the hero, or is he doomed to stay on TV? And what hero would you like to see get introduced into the Marvel franchise? If you liked our video, leave a thumbs up or a comment, and subscribe for more, comrade.